And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Holy Crap, the Vlogcast. Vlogcast that comes from a skeptical point of view to answer some of the questions of why. This Vlogcast started as a combination of spite and the Streisand effect when some people on Facebook did not like being told, you don't know what facts are. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. As a matter of fact, I know full well it doesn't mean what you think it means. Part of this is to follow through with the old adage, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination. I'm known as Shujin Tribble all over the place. You can find me under pretty much all media that way. Welcome to the show. Sorry we're starting a little bit late. I had a little bit of a techie problem, but don't worry about it. We can talk about that later. Let me go ahead and introduce you to tonight's lineup. First off, starting from north of the border into Ontario, Canada. Good morning, Heretic Woman.
Good morning.
From the Midwest of the U.S. Good evening, Bridget.
Good evening.
From south of me into Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Good morning, Joey.
Oh, I muted myself, then you muted me too. I get it.
No, I didn't.
Somebody did. Hi, everybody.
Moving just off to the right into the armpit of the capital. Good morning on Renault Tech.
And mine still smells better.
Yes, it does. Across the water, over to the north of England. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Shujin.
And just south into Paris, France. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning.
And for those of you that are watching live, of course, you'll notice we have one missing and one new. Yes, Dallin right now is not joining us, or at least I haven't heard he's supposed to be joining us. If he's watching right now, A, you're late. B, I hope you feel better. And, of course, joining us this week, special, because a couple of weeks ago when this news story first came out, I instantly typed out onto Facebook, you, me, my team, how do you feel about that? And she said, oh yeah. Joining us tonight, thank you from, well, out over Ohio way. Good morning, Callie Wright.
Good morning, all.
It's nice to have you over here, and that's sure a nice microphone you got there. I can actually read that on mirror.
Oh, why thank you. Yeah, hopefully it sounds like the money I spent on it.
She looks like all professional and stuff.
She does, doesn't she?
Ish.
She can't see my 3-screen extravaganza going on here, though.
That's actually good. None of us can. Me, I've got 2. So those of you that are watching live, of course, and thank you. Of course, it's always nice to have you guys. And like I said, sorry I was starting a little bit late. I had a little bit of a thing going on with Hangouts. However, if you are watching live, you can go ahead and take advantage of the question and answer system here at the Google Hangouts, or, of course, you can live tweet us at HolyCrapTV, and I've got the Twitter system up and running over here. And, of course, if you'd like to send an email at any time, feel free. Podcast at holycrapthevlogcast.com. Thank you very much for that. So, let me get everything started over here, because we've got... oh, you guys are going to love this week's freestyle, because, as usual, it got started courtesy of a Facebook thing.
Who brought the popcorn?
You know what? You bring your own. And if it's bacon-flavored, all the better. But we'll talk about bacon corn later. Bacorn? Yes, Bacorn. To the Ranting Griffin. You should look him up over on YouTube. You figure it out. Anyway, let me get you rolling over here. You're not helping. So let me get you started over here. Your 5-minute freestyle starts right now. I labeled this one Say When. I got into a big thing with people about who do they want to vote for and why. And some people were saying that they want to go for X. Some were saying they want to go for Y. Some were saying that they want to go for... Some people get that reference, and Uncle Kage, thank you very much for that one. One of the things that came up was military spending. They want to have, well, more military spending. Okay. I was trying to figure out why, and then it became a matter of how, and then it became a matter of how big. I did the numbers. Believe it or not, I actually went doing research. Yeah, imagine that. I'm actually doing more research now than I did back in high school, and that's not necessarily a good thing. You'd think I'd have actually applied myself in high school. No, imagine that. Give me some numbers. And admittedly, I didn't follow through all of the links on Wikipedia for this, so maybe a little weird, so just follow me a second. The top 15 defense budgets as of 2015, a year ago. Number 1, the United States. No surprise there. The number that's listed over here is just shy of $600 billion. Just shy of. Let me give you the next 4. China, 145 bill, 46, 145. Saudi Arabia, 82. I'm rounding a little bit. Russia, 66.5. And then the United Kingdom at 56. I want you to follow me along on this one for a second. If you take these 4, you've got China at 145, Saudi Arabia at 82. That brings us to a total of 200. Again, I'm rounding numbers a little bit. 228 billion. Add Russia at 66.5. That brings us to 294 billion. And then you add the United Kingdom at 56. That brings us to $350 billion. Now remember, I told you, the United States is currently spending approximately $600 billion. We're spending twice as much, approximately twice as much, as the next 4 largest budgets in the world. And one of those countries has no interest whatsoever in fighting with us, other than with words and tea and curry. So technically, we here as a country could spend half, yes, I'm channeling Eddie Murphy, half of that budget and still be competitive to the next 4 countries combined in money. And we're supposed to be spending money on the best material and equipment that money can buy, but China can throw a whole bunch more at us. Okay, fine. But with half of that money, there are approximately 21 million college and university students in the United States currently. That means if we were to take half of that money, each student could get $14,000 a year for college. Think about that a second. As of 2010, community college cost an average of $3,000 a year, a little less than. Private 4-year college, $26,000, give or take. Now, if you reduce the military budget by half, we're still competitive to the next 4 countries combined. Now, we could still fund a quarter of the college population to $3,500 each, a stipend of 10,500 students for the 4 years, and still have money left over for those that are underfunded for college. Now, here's my question. Like I started off with the whole thing, say when. How much is enough? When is enough for us to spend? How much more do you want to spend, and why? You want to spend more on military? If we're already spending money for the best equipment that money can buy, and we are easily 2 times over everybody else combined that could potentially do anything, what the hell are we spending our money on? More importantly, how many of these students and potential students need to pay more than those $14,000 a year for 4 years of college education, theoretically? How many of them have to pay with their lives because they were told, you should invest a couple of years in the Army because you can come out with a GI Bill? Why should these students have to risk life and limb for an education when all we need to do is not change the tax structure and just change what we're paying for? When do you pay enough? This is episode 125 on the docket, Your Honor. Green is not your color. That's going to be very important in just a little bit. We'll explain it very shortly. Heretic Woman, as of the moment, I have not heard anything new out of Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, which is becoming a broken record at this point. You haven't heard anything your side either?
No, I have not.
As of the recording of this show, it has now been 4 years, 1 month, 21 days since Raif Badawi was unjustly incarcerated for thought crime in Saudi Arabia. Our hopes and our thoughts are still with you and your family. Even if we don't hear anything, we're still thinking about you. So let me get things started really quickly with Callie because, well, she's kind of be a little part and parcel here.
Eugene.
Yep.
Just before you do that, just to add on to your 5-minute freestyle, I've just run some quick numbers and found out that the US 2015 defense budget was within 1 billion, equal to that of the next 12 countries combined. And
Wow.
by that point, and the on there, you're getting down into Iraq is the country where it levels out, and they're only spending 21 billion a year. And after that, it continues to drop.
Amazing how that works, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
What are the next countries going down?
Israel at 18.6, and I've only got the top 15 list here.
Yeah, which just goes to show. Once you get past those first 3, nobody is really a huge wants to hurt us. Imagine that. So anyway, so let's kind of backtrack a little bit. Callie, like I said earlier, 2 weeks ago, almost at this point, we both saw the same news article, and it's linked in the show notes.
We did indeed.
This was a huge piece, and as soon as I read it, like I said, I commented right over to you and invited you and just said, yeah, us, come on, you're in for this, and you were just like, oh yeah, this one was not a fun one for you to read at all, was it?
No, and I think it may be a little tough for people who aren't in these positions to get exactly how horrifying this stuff is. So, for the people who don't know what we're talking about is a school. I forget what state it was. Was it Virginia?
At this point, it doesn't really much matter.
Yeah,
because
it doesn't
could be
really
almost anywhere here in the U.S. now.
But so basically, we're talking about the bathroom debate with trans kids in high schools, and a school district came up with the idea. Here's how we're going to identify our trans students. We're going to make them wear green wristbands. In other words, we're going to paint giant targets on their backs. Is what we're going to do. This is one of those things where. So on my podcast, one of the episodes that I still get the most feedback on, a year and a half in, is episode 4, and that episode is the first time on the show that we talked about bathroom bills, and bathroom bills were still a new thing at this point. It wasn't quite the debate that it is now. And so I hadn't really thought all of these things through because, I mean, I was still new to activism, I was new to everything kind of at the time. And I came to this realization that, conservatives realize they've lost the marriage fight. So what are they coming after next? They're coming after me. They're coming after kids like me.
The individuals.
And I absolutely lost it on the show. And I just crying, sobbing my eyes out. And it was this kind of thing because, I mean, the attempted suicide rate for transgender people is shockingly disproportionate to that of the general population. To put things into perspective, it's 4 to 5% for the general population, 5 to 10 for LGBT folks, and 44 for transgender people.
Jeez.
It's even higher for youth, And youth who don't have accepting families are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but an unwelcoming and unsupportive school environment exacerbates it as well, like to a large degree.
I'd like to point out to our listeners that 8 times likely is 800%.
Yeah.
80 times likely is 8,000%. Sorry, some people are not math enabled. I try to fill in the gaps.
No, that's good.
And also, it is a school in Wisconsin.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I mean, trans kids are killing themselves because they're being tormented at school, because the bullying is relentless, because it's against the law for these kids' parents to say, you know what, I'm not going to force you into this environment every day. Even if they have supportive parents who 100% want to support their kids through their transition and they want all the best for their kids and they totally support their kids and who they are, unless these parents can give up jobs of their own and homeschool their kids, they're legally obligated to send their kids to the place where they're being tortured every single day. And kids make the decision to take their own lives because of this. And so what this is doing is just heaping onto the problem. And now we're going to point out, we're gonna put a scarlet letter on these kids so everyone knows who they are, so they know exactly who to target, they know exactly who to pick on. And I mean, this stuff has a body count. I mean, this is not just, your average, schoolyard teasing, kids will be kids, bullies, oh, you said a mean thing, get over it. I mean, these kids are being tortured to death.
Now, there's a piece about this that I want to. I specifically told the crew before we went to air that I wanted to make sure that we hit before we get too much further off from where we are at this point. There was someone that was invited to be on the show. I did not make any kind of reference to it because I was not sure whether or not they wanted to be on. There's someone that did learn a little bit about, well, actually, by comparison, a lot about this particular topic over the last, during the summer. And I extended the offer to said person, and they have decided that they were not going to join us this time. They have expressed an interest in perhaps being on again sometime in the future, but at this point, just a no. Now, because of that, I wanted to make sure that we, as a collective, as a group, or individually, actually, as a matter of fact, we've said before on the show, how many voices should there be because of the atheism side? And the general answer is usually all of them, as many as we can get, all of them. But we've also said, and again, I'm talking on the atheism side for a second, this translates, that if it's not safe for you, if you're not comfortable for whatever reason, or for no reason whatsoever, it's okay not to get into the fray at this time, or at all, so long as you're not hurting any particular person or cause. It's okay to hang back if you're not sure how to help it along. Now, to go along with this very same idea, there are some people who do not feel comfortable at this point with trying to figure out how to add their voice to being an LGBTQ supporter. That's okay. Take the time that you need, learn whatever it is. If you can add your voice later or in a different way, cool. But there are also some people who can't add their voices at this point, and for all of you, whoever you are, closeted or quiet, it's okay to hang back. It's okay to do what you can quietly on the sideline. It's okay to not paint a target on your own back, even if it's just one that you think that you should be doing. Now, as I also told this person, guilt is a really piss poor reason for doing something. don't do it because of guilt. Do it because you want to, and because you're comfortable with it, and you're ready for it. And if ever the question is coming back with, I don't know, that's reason enough right there to hold back and wait.
Guilt for what?
For joining in the discussion, for adding their voice to.
There's nothing to be guilty about.
Well, the people who are not in a position to help or don't feel comfortable enough in helping out yet, that's okay.
Well, yeah, what you run into is, say you're a member of the LGBTQ community in some way. So what you see the problems that the community faces, especially trans people. And if you're a person who is a member of that community and you think, hey, you know what? I've got an internet connection. I've got a microphone. I should be out in the middle of this fight, fighting this. But if I do this, you know what? Maybe my mom will find out who I am, and that could destroy my means of going to college. Or maybe I'm employed by a small business who has a super conservative owner, and maybe I don't want my boss to find out who I am, at least not yet. So the idea is that people shouldn't be shamed into risking their support system and their meal ticket to be an activist because they feel like they're obligated to help. The impulse obviously comes from a good place because you want to help, you want to be part of the cause, you want to advance the cause of equality, and that's admirable and that's good. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to shame people and force people into putting themselves into a position where they're going to be in danger. And by danger, I don't even necessarily mean losing friends or losing family members. In a lot of ways, I'm actually talking about physical safety. I was just talking about this on my show on an episode that'll come out Thursday, where there's a video on YouTube of this kid coming out to his parents, and his dad beats him when he finds out. And so it's not even just a matter of social safety, although that's enough. The idea that you might lose your job, or the idea that your family will disown you and therefore you can't go to college anymore because your parents are paying for your college. Those things are enough, but we're not even just talking about those things. We're talking about someone's very safety a lot of times. So when we talk about the value of activism and we talk about the value of speaking up and using your voice to make a difference, the balance that we want to be careful to strike is for people who are in those positions who aren't safe doing that. We want to make sure we're not shaming them and telling them that they're not good enough because they're not willing to put themselves at risk in that way.
Oh yeah, there I see what you're saying. Yeah.
As a good friend of mine once said, a dead activist is a shitty activist.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, don't martyr yourself. Don't sacrifice. Well, don't. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, and that's what I tell people all the time is, people are like, oh, it's so cool that you got in front of this big crowd and made a speech, or it's so cool that you're open about who you are, and I don't want to be falsely modest and pretend that's nothing. But the only reason that I'm able to do those things is because I am in an environment where those things are okay. I'm not risking my job. I'm not risking important family relationships. I have a supportive community and a supportive friend group, and I happen to be naturally inclined to enjoying having conversations with people and giving talks in front of big crowds. So, it's not that I'm doing something extraordinary, really. I'm doing what comes naturally to me, and I'm able to do it because of the environment that I'm in. I'm not really putting myself in any danger doing so. So it's the fact that I'm surrounded by this community that made me feel safe enough to do these things. So I think the conversation shouldn't be around here's how you come out. The conversation should be here's how we're going to make it safe. So when you decide you want to, you can.
Yeah.
And I think the message is for us. The onus is on us not to shame people into putting themselves forward.
Yeah.
It's the feeling of guilt is not in the person wanting to express themselves. It's for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
It's not even guilt. I wouldn't want to call it
No, I wouldn't
guilt.
say guilt either.
I would call it a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the
Right.
whole picture instead
Right.
of just the.
Yeah, Callie. And in a way, I guess it kind of really sucks that this is 2016 and people like you have to get up in front of big crowds and make speeches and do shows about something this basic as treating other people like human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and obviously this, maybe is a tangential conversation to have, but I think what we have to be careful in doing is painting people who enact these rules, like the ones at the school or anything else, as universally bad and monstrous people, right? These are people who are infected by bad ideas. Even the worst people in the world are probably, maybe, I don't know, like nice to their kids or nice to their wife and horrible to everyone
The
else. You
dog,
know what I mean?
maybe.
The idea we're monolithically evil, I think, is as dangerous as what they're doing in itself, because we have to understand how people who might otherwise be good and compassionate people can not see that in a certain group of people because of their gender identity, because of their sexuality, because of the color of their skin, things like that. I think we have to be really honest with ourselves about where those things come from, and we have to be willing to sort of, I hesitate to use the phrase meet them where they are, but maybe come a little bit towards where they are and understand where those things are coming from, because the thing is, so many of these people, they didn't just dream up the idea of transphobia or homophobia themselves. They were taught this too.
Hmm.
And obviously there's a point where people have to take responsibility for their own beliefs and their own actions, but those things don't happen in a vacuum. If you grow up being told your entire life that being gay is an abomination, chances are that's probably what you're going to believe. And we have to figure out how to show those people that's wrong, instead of just calling them terrible people for being that way. We can call out the harm that those beliefs cause and how bad those ideas are, without just beating them up.
Well, and if you think of people who maybe were transphobic or homophobic and they've come to change that to some degree, a lot of them, if you talk to them and you say, well, what was it that finally got you to look at it from a different perspective? Like, well, I found out, a family member was, gay, bi, trans, or whatever, or someone I work with, or someone that was important to me, or I just met someone from one of those groups and realized, well, damn, they're just a normal person. Holy shit. And that's oftentimes what changes it for them, which, that's because, as I say, they've been told and taught forever that, people who aren't like you are the boogeyman, and when they realize that's not true, that's when they can finally kind of say, wow, maybe I wasn't taught the right thing. So, and that's why I think Callie's right, is demonizing them doesn't necessarily help anything at all. I mean, yeah, if somebody's an asshole because they like being an asshole, well, not much you can do about that. But if you take the time just to kind of, educate before demonizing, that's certainly going to help.
Yeah,
And
well,
I think
and I think that's super important, because I just completely lost my train of thought.
Because
I
Kelly
add-
said so now.
I hope I'm not going off on a tangent, but what this describes is just a lack of skepticism, because in general lack of skepticism in people, because people generally tend to accept everything they're brought up with without questioning it, and they need some sort of empirical experience to change that. And I mean, that's just the total lack of critical thought about anything that they're told. So until they have an empirical experience, they're going to maintain this bias or this prejudice. And that's just a lack of questioning things in general. Lack of thought, basically, because there's no rational reason why somebody should be bigoted.
Well, yeah,
I remember what I was going to say. Sorry, I remember what I was going to say. So I think there are two ideas that have to be able to exist simultaneously, and one is that what we were saying earlier about not automatically demonizing and beating people up is true. We should not do that, but that doesn't mean that we let those things go, right? That doesn't mean that we don't call out the bad ideas. That doesn't mean that we don't sometimes forcefully point out, no, this is wrong, you're hurting people, this is harmful, and here's why. But we can stop short of saying, therefore, you're a horrible human being and don't deserve to live, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I meant to say.
That makes sense.
Now, that brings us, actually formally, into the real story and the real reason for talking through this. The story, like was said, one trans student was using the bathroom of choice, and one administrator saw this and had a hissy fit. And that's where everything started falling apart. And then the whole green wristband so that we can keep track of who's supposed to be where. And for me, specifically, this was instantly, I mean instantly reading this, this was Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
This was the pink triangle marking for the homosexual population of Nazi Germany. Now, for those that are unaware of this, I can explain part of it, but Callie, I don't know if you want to because of how charged it can be. I would assume that you've got a hell of a lot more knowledge about this than a lot of other people.
You might assume incorrectly about that.
Okay.
I might be able to help a little bit with that.
Be my guest. It gives me an opportunity to have a little bit more tang to drink. By the way,
I know what it is, but as far as the full history.
Well,
yeah, hold on.
Yes.
Heretic Woman will go ahead and explain it while I have my drink of tang, which, by the way, happy 5th or 6th birthday for the Mars lander. So, yeah.
Excellent. So what a lot of people may not know, because pretty much unless you've lived under a rock and never looked at a history book, you will know that the Jewish population was forced to wear the yellow stars so that everybody would know who was Jewish and who wasn't. Well, what a lot of people may not know, and where the origin of the pink triangle as a symbol in the LGBTQ community comes from, is that in Nazi Germany, homosexuality was also considered to be,
undesirable.
Undesirable, yes. A very undesirable trait that would land you also in a ghetto and or a concentration camp. And they were forced to wear a pink triangle on their person at all times, the same way that a Jewish person was made to wear the yellow star. So that is actually where the pink triangle symbol comes from. What I love is that the LGBTQ community has reappropriated that symbol and turned it back into a positive. I really, really wish someone would do that with a swastika, but that's a whole other show. But yeah, in a nutshell, that is the origin of the pink triangle and where that comes from. So the green wristband absolutely echoes that for sure. It's like Callie said, wearing a giant target over your head going, I'm different, mock me, and yeah, makes me very angry.
Yeah, me and Shujin were chatting about this on Facebook last week, and literally my first word when I heard about the story was just Judenstern.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is exactly it. For those of you that were watching over on the video feed, by the way, Tech did show up the Jewish star that they were using, which is what's there on the screen for you right now. And he's also found the pink triangle, which was the version that was used in Germany during the 30s.
In this case, you've noticed that they've merged the pink triangle with yellow to indicate a gay Jew.
Well, yeah. The actual system, the coding system that they used, they had single triangles. For example, brown triangle for Roma males, inverted or uninverted red triangle for POWs, pink triangle for homosexual men, purple triangle for Jehovah's Witnesses, yada yada. They also had the double triangle, which you know, superimposed on each other, they look like the Star of David. Basic yellow was with the word Jude on them is Jewish. Red inverted triangle superimposed on a yellow one was a Jewish political prisoner. Pretty much all the double triangles were just Jewish, but they had different setups for them based on the situation. For example, pink triangle superimposed on a yellow one, Jewish sexual offender.
Lovely.
Yep. Now the thing about this that absolutely drove me up a wall when I was first reading it was, like I said, this is echoes of the Nazis, of what they did. And I did say in the intro for the show, in the show notes, that we were going to be tipping Godwin's law like we're table flipping, and with
I was just saying, this is for once a justified comparison.
Oh,
Yes.
hell yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've made comparisons a while ago, months ago. I made specific comparisons to Nazi Germany and the political campaign going on for. So
Yeah.
I ended that one. I forget which episode it was, but I specifically ended that one with the map coordinates for the end of the line for Auschwitz, and the fact that this is not the first time that something like this has come up is, what? Even with a PG, you can get away with one F-bomb. Fucking terrifying. And that's the reason why. That's the biggest reason why. I mean, Callie, you are fighting as best you can with voice, with as much love and tenderness and teaching and learning as you possibly can with everything. And you hear about these kinds of things happening. This has got to be one of those moments where you look at it and you go, really? This is not... How did you... Why? Really? Can't you know what you're doing is wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that's almost the exact script.
No, they don't realize what they're doing is wrong because they're not operating from a seat of rational thinking. They're operating on indoctrination. They're operating on bigotry and hatred and misunderstanding and lack of empathy. So no, they can't. They don't see doing it wrong.
Taking it one step further, it's a fear of different, which is
It's tribalism.
thoughtless conformism, and that's an inroad to.
It's a form of tribalist conformity. Like, that's the root of it.
It's scary.
Well,
You went all garbly there, Joseph.
Yeah,
the way that I see it, when we were, when we were just starting to become Homo sapiens, and we're on the Serengeti, and we hear a noise off to our left, we have to assume it's a threat, right?
Yes.
We have to assume it's a threat, because if we don't, it very well could kill us.
Unfamiliar sound.
Yeah, so we have to. So I mean, we had to assume that the unknown was dangerous, right?
Well,
so this is baked into us by evolution.
And to bring it forward, and this is actually, remember that talk that I did, Callie, that I did the last minute? That was it. I kind of go over the history of conformity and tribalism, and even into what we would consider the, quote, modern era. Medieval times, if you saw another person on the highway, if they were different from you, chances are they were going to mug you and steal your stuff, because that's just how it was at that period. So it comes from a place of value, but we have come so far beyond that. But our instinct, for lack of a better word, has not caught up with us. So intellectually, we know, because we are becoming a global society now. We know that somebody being different does not need to be a threat whatsoever, but that that instinct is still there, and to me anyway, it's easier to kind of go with that instinct than to educate yourself as to why that instinct is no longer valid.
Well, yeah, and we don't teach these things to
No.
kids generally.
No, we don't.
I mean,
In fact,
good
we
parents
teach.
do, of course.
In fact, we
But-
teach stranger danger. We teach that person, you don't know them, so fear them. When in reality, it's the people that you do know that are usually the most fearsome in that context.
Just turn on the television. There's fear everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes money.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That's a big part of it.
I'm in government contracting. It makes money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, fast forwarding through that for a second, there's a piece about this that we've mentioned that this is something that is taught to us. Pardon me. It's taught as reinforcement for something that we've had that has been good for our species' continued survival early on. So it's kind of hardwired in there. But now we have the opportunity of teaching more and teaching differently, and I wasn't quite sure who I was going to hit for this one, but Joey, I want to get you because I think that you and Tech are probably going to be the two good ones to answer on this one. First off, Joey, if history were taught better so that these contexts would be much more glaring, do you think that people would be able to pick up on this stuff the same way that we have, the same way that it was suddenly just huge red flags for me, for Callie, for other people that are looking at it, and not even historians, but maybe even armchair historians, to go, wait a minute, hold it, this sounds familiar.
Yes, I've discussed this with a few people thus far, and all of them immediately drew the conclusion that, wow, that sounds a lot like something the Nazis would think of, or something from 1984.
Yeah, that's another.
And
Go ahead.
so, yeah, I have no doubt that people are picking up on it even now, even those who aren't as into history as I am, because let's face it, I'm pretty into history. But I don't know. I think, yeah, it probably would, but at the same time, we're starting to see that generation where they're starting to just wash over all that older stuff that, oh, well, this is the modern era, and nothing like that could ever happen here, right?
Yeah, and Tech, where are you feeling on that? I'll get to you, Cal. Don't worry.
No, get to Cal. It's really just get to Cal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what we have to do, okay? Because if you look at the way human societies tend to organize, we're in groups and out groups, right? And there's the idea of in-group diversity versus out-group homogeny. So what we tend to think is that our in-groups are incredibly diverse, and that our out-groups are entirely monolithic. So that's why you see so many white people saying, well, black people do this, or gay people do this, right? We tend to assume the people who we don't see as part of our groups as being all the same. And we tend to think that the people that are a part of our in-groups are very different from one another. And I wish I could cite names of studies to back this up, but this is a thing that's been studied. So what we need to do is not try to change that dynamic, because let's face it, it's baked into us as a species. So what I try to put my focus on is making the people who we see as our out group, changing our way of thinking to think of those people as being our in group. So we're not so much thinking about them as the other, right? I mean, and that doesn't mean that we erase our differences, because we're obviously very different. As a trans person, I have an entirely different walk through society, generally speaking, than a cisgender person does. But we can acknowledge that without completely separating ourselves and saying, no, I'm nothing like you. And I think that's what we need to do, and that's why in the activism that I do so much, I don't focus so much on like, let's elect the right candidate, let's pass the right laws. Those things are obviously very, very important. But in my mind, people vote with their hearts and minds. You know, assuming they have the right to vote, which, you know, and most places they do now. People vote with their hearts and minds. So the idea is to change people's hearts and minds. So there was even a talk that I gave once that was like, and if you think you don't have a trans friend, you do now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's to get people to think about and acknowledge those things. Like, yes, I am different. There's no denying that. It would be silly to say, well, you're no. I mean, I am. I just plain am. But the idea is to make that difference matter less.
Or the way I like to look at it is to celebrate difference, because to me, to me, conformity is such a huge negative in society, and because we're always looking to how similar is X person to me and the other people in my in-group, as you say. But to me, if you celebrate and say, hey, it's not only okay to be different, it's preferred to be different, I think
an
we
advantage.
can... It is. It's absolutely
new
an
ideas.
advantage.
It's,
Yeah, and we can work to lessen the impact of being different. If we look at being different as a positive as much as possible, then it's not going to be a big deal. It's like if you walk down the street and you see somebody who's smiling, you're like, hey, it's a happy person. You're not like, well, they're not all like grumpy because they didn't have coffee like me. You know, no one cares about that. It's like, hey, they're smiling and I'm not, or whatever, just as a random example. But to focus on the difference as being a positive, I think can help in so many ways with a lot of different issues.
Yeah, and that's
I think it's completely... Oh, sorry.
I think going back to what Callie was saying about the in-group, out-group thing, I would actually argue that as individuals we can sort of change that dynamic. Because although everyone's got this bias about their in-group being diverse, actually the more diverse you make your in-group, your circle of friends and people where if it includes people of sort of different genders, sexualities, races, backgrounds, whatever, then each step for adding a new sort of demographic or encountering a new difference is each time it's a smaller step mentally.
I think it's completely possible to eliminate the concept of in-groups and out-groups. I mean,
I think it may be possible, but I think that's going to take quite a while.
Well, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's two different tasks here. There's dealing with the status quo today and getting things to change, and then there's an optimal society to work towards. These are, unfortunately for the time being, they're two distinct things, but you can't just lump them together. You can't expect modern society to just accept an optimal one.
And true. I don't think people are going to accept, general difference and diversity overnight either, and get rid of that need to have everything conform. That's going to take a lot of doing as well, because it is pretty ingrained.
It takes both rational thought and a convincing argument and experience.
Yeah, there's a piece about this that I wanted to make sure that we hit as far as to this whole in-group, out-group kind of thing. And Bridget, I did kind of give you a little bit of heads up. I didn't say exactly what, though. One of the things that was a huge stumbling block, of course, for LGBTQ folks was the DSM. Not too very long ago, homosexuality was listed in the DSM, wasn't it?
Yep, sure was.
Now, for those that don't exactly understand the acronym, which goes by really quickly, because we've mentioned it before, and I keep trying to remind myself, you got to really explain what that is. Got to explain what that is really quickly. The DSM is
It's a diagnostic statistical manual for mental issues, mental illness, and I guess revised every few years. But anyway, it lists certain criteria for uh, different mental illnesses, and homosexuality used to be considered a mental illness.
And if memory serves, it was the mid-'70s, I think, when that was finally changed.
Mm-hmm. Being transgender used to be in there too.
Yeah, all kinds of things that that didn't meet the Church of the Day's rather dull interpretation of human sexuality were in there. And now they've moved much more to a position is unless whatever it is causing a direct problem in a person's life and causing them then it's not a problem.
So now we've got the medical profession who has finally come around and said it's not a problem. It's a piece of the human condition. It is one. What's the statistic? 1/10 of the population that's gay or homosexual.
I think.
Okay, you know what? Just for argument's sake, for a second, let's just use 10%, just because. So we now have the medical profession that says, okay, what we used to think of, which was 50-50, not so much. It's a little bit more like 45-10. Okay, there's probably a little bit more in there, but we're really trying to play catch up, and we're really learning a lot more. So you should all just kind of, we know what we're talking about because we've got more statistics and new statistics, and that opens up one last piece that I want to get to because it's a pain in the ass, and I wanted to make sure that I got Bridget in here a little bit more because, I got to make sure that I commend her for being very soft-spoken. You need to get that microphone into your throat.
Sorry.
The real quick argument that we absolutely hate to hear, because this is kind of where it plays into. Science obviously doesn't know what it's talking about because it keeps changing what it's talking about. This is a thing that comes up all the time, and the DSM changes, like you said, every few years. Why does it change every few years?
Well, how can I put this? Psychiatry is not an exact science, it's an art. And part of it has to do with insurance companies and what they will and will not pay for as far as therapy goes and mental disorders and conditions. And also, as studies come out, new diagnostic criteria are established, and things catch up eventually.
And as the science catches up, eventually society catches up. It sometimes, unfortunately, tends to be a little bit
decades
longer.
later.
Yeah.
And I think the important thing to point out, too, is that it's not so often that science changes, but what's being reported about the science changes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because this is an argument that my grandma used to make all the time. You never know what's healthy because this year something's really healthy. Next year something's really unhealthy. But if you go look at the material that's being referred to, it's almost always provisional, right? So it's like eggs may possibly cause cholesterol problems, but the reporting is eggs are cholesterol.
Yeah.
And then
First it was eat eggs, then don't eat eggs, then
right.
No, okay, it's eat the eggs, just don't eat the yolk, eat the white part. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When if you look at the material that these people are sourcing this stuff from, those positions are almost always provisional and couched in some sort of qualification. It's like we have evidence that's maybe suggestive of this. And the media will take that and run with it and say, this is what they found, when that's not really the case.
Yeah,
So
and
I think it's not even, and obviously, I mean, what science says about things is going to change because we learn more. Like, duh, that's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think we want to make sure that we're looking at the way that science is reported about too, because obviously, gray area, complicated issues don't make good clickbait.
Yeah.
when in reality, everything is an in the middle, gray, complicated issue.
And like the first time when somebody says, well, a study proves blah, 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 my first question is, what was their methodology and how did they choose their sample?
Why are you
And
using
have
logic?
the results been replicated?
Why are you using
Yes,
logic?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A lot of these kind of studies that Callie was referring to when they're hyped up results in the media, that eggs cause cancer or coffee causes whatever, are either like in vitro studies, so that's studies in a glass dish on a lab bench, or the studies of like half a dozen rats at a very preliminary level, and they are 10, 20 years away from actually doing any tests on how this works in humans, if they were ever to get that far. But it's unfortunately the media decides to blow it out of proportion immediately, and usually get the basic facts completely wrong.
And for all those people that are looking at clickbaity stuff, as soon as you start touching and complaining about my coffee, gloves are off. You ain't taking my coffee. You're not taking it away from me. Yeah, Joe.
We want to talk about.
If I was gonna cherry pick scientific studies, I could find, if I wanted to, that a diet of ecstasy and oral sex is beneficial for.
You could. You totally could. Like, you can literally make a study say whatever the hell you want it to, depending on what your methodology is, how you choose your sample, and any of that stuff. And that's why, like, when I get people giving me studies, I'm like,
Can I volunteer for that study, please? I'd really love
the ecstasy and oral sex.
Yeah, I can mail you the ecstasy, but at the oral sex, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a distance issue there.
Yeah, there's the whole paper cut thing. Yeah, Callie, go ahead.
We want to take this back to how we're talking about, how homosexuality used to be classed as a mental illness and being transgender used to be classed as a mental illness. When we talk about how we classify something as a mental illness, usually the conversation is around whether or not a condition is maladaptive, right? Whether or not it causes significant disruption in your life and it has bad consequences for your life, right? And so when we look at homosexuality, right, the only problems really that gay people have are the problems society creates because they don't like them. And the same with transgender people. So if you look at the latest version of the DSM, in reference to trans people, what is in the DSM is gender dysphoria, which I actually think is reasonable, right? Because gender dysphoria is maladaptive in most cases. Right. It's a condition that needs medical treatment for those who feel it to that degree. It requires hormone replacement therapy or surgery to make those feelings go away, and so that kind of thing makes sense to me.
Before you go,
anxiety and
before you go past that point, would you explain exactly what the term means?
What, maladaptive?
No, dysphoria.
Gender dysphoria.
Oh, gender dysphoria. Yeah. So, the word dysphoria is just a word that means extreme discomfort, and so gender dysphoria is an extreme discomfort with the disconnect between the way your brain expects your body to be and the way your body actually is. So it's a person who was born with a penis but identifies as a woman and seeks surgery to correct that problem, or a person who needs hormone replacement therapy for things to just be right. And I could go for hours and hours and hours about gender dysphoria, but when it comes right down to it, it's just this sense of extreme discomfort with the way that your body is in reference to your gender. And that's the reason why willingly went through puberty a second time, and the reason that I'm going to eventually spend thousands of dollars and half a year of my life recovering from a very major and invasive surgery to correct that problem, because it is that much of a disruption in my life, and it's, all of the worst parts of my life have surrounded that. Every time that I've ever thought about hurting myself was because of that. Every time that I've not wanted to wake up in the next morning was because of that. So, that makes sense to classify that as something that needs to be diagnosed and treated.
And considering that this is not a David Smalley show, thank you for not going on for 3 hours. I really, really do appreciate that.
So where I've run into issues with that being in the DSM is where I encounter people who are like, well, that's what being trans is. It's in the DSM, therefore it's a mental illness. But their perspective of, quote, mental illness is you need to be put on drugs and taught how to be whatever gender you were born with. And so that as trying to advocate for acceptance, I've found that to be a bit of a sticking point with some people.
What you do
throwing
is
that out there. Yeah.
You can refer back to the studies that say what is the effective treatment, right?
Yes.
Literally the only treatment that has any evidentiary support is medical transition, to the extent that the person feels they need it. So for some people, it's just, I'm going to wear different clothes and grow my hair out. Or, for some people it's hormones. For some people it's any number of different surgeries that trans folks have available based on, what you were born with and how you identify. The only thing that has any evidentiary support is transition. They have tried to treat trans women by supplementing with testosterone. It brings immediate relief, and within a couple of months they go back to feeling just as horrible as they used to, because that's not what makes sense to their head, because that's just not who they are.
Right.
Now that we've gotten all through a lot of the coloration of this issue, we need to really tackle this full bore, because the situation in question deserves us to really be concentrating on it at this point for the rest of the show. Now, normally I got no problem with us going down various bunny holes, because that's just the way that the nature of this beast. There's just so many different pieces that we kind of pick away at because there's threads that we need to investigate. But we really need to specifically target this particular item, because this is not an isolated event, and it's not going to continue to be its own event. It's all too real, because if it's already happened once, the great God Murphy says it's gonna happen again. And the outcome right now, we're very fortunate that the outcome is the student in question has said, no, screw you guys, I'll take you into court. And at the rate this is going, I would find this incredibly difficult to believe that a court would find against the student and their civil rights at this point, the way that this
and yet the Supreme Court put a hold on an order, on a court's order to let a trans student, and this is a different case, but there was a trans student who took their case to court and won, and when escalated to the United States Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court provisionally put a hold on that order until the case could be heard further, which is not a good sign.
No,
it's not. But we can't. We are lay people. We are not lawyers, any of us. So what we think should be, as far as the law is concerned, is going to vary greatly between each of us personally, as well as culturally, as well as politically. And by political, I mean we're not all in the U.S., as we've mentioned on many an occasion. So what our positions are likely to be at this point individually is going to be tempered with how we have seen the situation, how we feel about it, and what we think the outcomes are liable to be for good or for ill, for individuals and societal. With that in mind, because there's, like I said from the outset, just having read the story in and of itself drove me up a wall because of what I've known, because of what I've read, what I've studied. So for me, the simple question to this whole damn thing is, what should have happened in the first place? And because of that, we have to kind of take a step back and go, was the administrator correct in what they did according to the rules that they were supposed to be playing under? I'm not entirely certain because I did not read that far into it. Do any of us know at this point? I'm guessing probably not.
In other words, what that particular school district's guidelines are?
Exactly.
No idea.
And that's one of the biggest problems. We don't know if the administrator was following their own rules. The legality of those rules, of course, is a whole other thing, but that's a libel discussion from history, from books from way back when, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah, Chris?
So I've not looked into what the specific rules are in this case. What I have read is that I think it was the majority of other staff were either fairly supportive or neutral on the issue, and no one else really kicked up a fuss.
Yeah. Well,
So I'm guessing if it was a firm rules thing, then it would have come up earlier.
what I can say, generally speaking, I don't know about this case specifically. Generally, what you will find, and this is changing, thankfully, but generally what you'll find is that school districts don't have policy for this, one way or the other.
Yeah, I would
It's
imagine
not
not.
something that has factored into their thinking thus far. There's an organization that I partner with sometimes called GLSEN, and that's the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. And I'm not sure if they're international, but in the United States, their function is to support LGBT youth and work towards safe schools for LGBT youth. And the folks in the organization locally where I'm here, what they are hearing is their schools are coming to them and saying, we don't have policy for this. What the hell do we do? So it's highly likely that there was no policy to begin with, and that this teacher just had a personal problem and decided to make it an issue. So I think that's a problem in itself, and I think that's why the Obama administration sending those letters out to all those schools saying, hey, just so you know, we've interpreted Title IX to protect these kids in, they should be able to use the right bathroom. And that's why I think that is so huge, because a lot of those schools don't have policy written. So this is the federal government stepping in and saying, yeah, here's what the law is, and you're risking the hammer coming down if you don't get it right. So I think that's why the hugeness of that act, I don't think, can be understated.
I think
Isn't
what
that
should have
weird, though?
happened is, if this person did have some kind of personal issue or belief, whatever that has driven them to this action, then as a professional person, on there, particularly given the way that this is a socially important issue, and there's been a number of sort of broadly related issues factoring in the news and in the US very prominently over the last couple of years, you'd expect the very least a professional would have done would be to seek guidance and advice on what would be the best solution, and on there, and not just act unilaterally.
Well, how about them thinking about it themselves? I mean, isn't like
Well,
waiting for somebody to send a list of rules,
I
isn't that in a
think
way just waiting for
I
dictate? That's
I,
kind
I
of
can I can shed some light on this. I've been doing some research here while we're talking. The student in question had run for prom king just before this, and initially had been denied the right to run as prom king, and then after fighting that, was allowed to run as prom king. And I think that's probably where the Joseph, what are you
Joseph.
doing? But I think that's probably where the issue came from. The staff is, hey, this student's already causing a problem, and now they want to use the boys' bathroom. Like, yeah, we don't like this. That would be my guess.
And I think the other thing too, Joseph, to your question about thinking about this proactively, I think a lot of times what people think about this is, I mean, they see this as a problem, and they don't see it as a problem in that we have these students that we need to support. They see it as a problem as in, we hope we don't have these people to come into our lives and create a disruption.
Yes.
so conformism.
Because they see it as sort of sullying the good nature, the good image of where they are.
But that's non-thought.
Well, of course it is, but that doesn't mean that they don't do it. And so what they have, I mean, it's a willful denial. That this is a nice town. That doesn't happen here. That kind of thing. I think in a lot of places that's about the extent of the thought that goes into it.
Yeah, and instead they make themselves and their school or organisation they're working with look like horrible bigots and sully their reputation that way.
Whereas
why I said, given the awareness of this kind of issue in the media, that's why I said any professional should have sought advice and guidance and weighed it up very carefully before acting. And I can't believe that the action that they took was based on any kind of sort of widespread advice or guidance, because I'm sure someone would have said, wasn't this a thing in Germany, like in the 40s?
And these are educators. That's what scares me.
The worst
if
thing
they run
too.
it past the history professor, they may have.
I think what gives me pause too is I get the impression it was just one or two faculty members, but they felt comfortable enough to make a decision like that and assumed that they would have the support of the community to go ahead and do something like that. And that's, I think, the mentality of why they didn't bother, looking for advice outside and getting direction, because they're like, well, like Callie said, well, this is our community and this is how we like it and we're just going to do it our way, and to hell with what anybody else, they're probably sitting there going, those whiny liberal bastards, like that's the kind of mentality that flares up in these situations.
Clan-minded conformism.
That's all that is. I was sort about assumptions making an ass out of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, here's a piece about this that is really pissing me off the more I'm thinking about it now. They had a tacit acceptance of this student the way that they were until that student started to go ahead and say, I would like to be included in the normal day-to-day of my being a person in this school. Callie, is that or is that not one of the biggest times when the flash paper suddenly goes boom?
Well, yeah, because it's the same mentality with, I don't care if people are gay, I just wish they wouldn't kiss in front of me. It's that kind of thing. It's the, you convince yourself that you're not a bigot and that you don't have a problem with it. You just don't want it in your backyard, which is obviously not even remotely a better position to have, because you wouldn't, I mean, generally speaking, those people don't have a problem with straight couples holding hands or kissing each other in public. It's they don't they don't want to be faced with someone who is different,
It's
especially in a
not
way that feels
here, huh?
threatening to them.
Oh yeah.
People can be different over there. Like
Right.
different people be over that way where I don't have to see it.
Like
Yeah.
here in France, like public displays of affection, they're rare. You know, people in general don't like displays of affection.
I
So,
thought you
mean,
guys
it's
were supposed to be the major lovers over there. Like what the hell?
yeah, well, stop watching Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah, well, that's something else. That's a very cultural thing too, because I know from when I've been recently having to deal with this again. Another story for another time. That in Japan, public displays of affection are, how do I put it? Not exactly accepted nearly as much. Even holding hands is quite rare.
A love scene in a Japanese movie is two people nodding at each other.
As much of a joke as that might be, it's sadly it's not too far from the truth. There's a lot of cultural stuff that happens. I want to. It's going to sound stupid for a second, but follow me on this one for just a second. Callie, do you remember the TV series? Oh God, now I'm pulling a blank on it.
Oh God, you devil! No.
No. That was a TV series. Although, to be perfectly fair, George Burns, I miss you so much. He'd
Pokemon?
be 100 and dead now, I think, at this point. It was Will and Grace. That was what I was trying to remember. Will
yes.
and Grace. You remember. They had a scene where they were all kinds of ticked off that the gay kiss didn't happen on NBC, which was great because they were on NBC, and they went ahead and they did it anyway.
WNBC.
It was TV, but they shirked away from it. Now at the time, this was mid late 90s, yeah. So it was played off as a comedy thing, but it was still a public display of affection. It was a gay kiss on primetime TV nationwide. I don't remember anybody going nuts when that aired, even though it was a comedy. Nobody went absolutely ballistic for the most part. Do you remember that particular scene? Do you remember anything going? Do you remember there being fights in the streets and bonfires in the police cars? I don't.
I remember there being some mild bitching about it, but that's about it.
No, well, and you know, it's so hard to tell like what the actual general sentiment of these things are, because the few people who have a problem with it are always going to yell the loudest. So it's like, is this like 5 people standing in the corner just being super loud, or is this actually a significant number of people that have a problem with this kind of thing? Because I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, we did a good news episode on my show where we were talking about it was one of those like ABC Family shows that like makes it like 2 seasons, but like there was like a 14-year-old boy who was exploring his sexuality, and he ends up kissing a boy, and like I remember hearing some like grumbling and whining about that, but you know, I mean, it wasn't anything that was like on the evening news. People are talking about, you know, the end of civilization as we know it, that kind of thing. So you know, I guess at least, you know, we can at least be a little bit happy that we're past that level of consternation over it. I don't know.
Callie. People have viewed like teenagers doing anything as the end of civilization for generations.
That is a fair point.
I mean, it's like, you know, these rowdy teenagers are reading novels instead of the Bible. It's hell's going to break loose was the thing in about the 1800s.
Chris, you know, you don't even need to focus on that. It's just look at everybody here. We're all to blame for every time there's a flood or earthquake or a volcano exploding.
Yeah, that's why I always say.
Well,
I say, if we're going to be a flame, enjoy it.
You know, cleavage causes earthquakes, right? Wasn't that some of your mom said that somewhere?
I have heard that somewhere along the way.
Boobquake.
Yep.
Cleavage
parade.
closets, earthquakes in my pants.
By the way, Callie, you and Celeste in front of those picketers at Pride was a thing of beauty. I just have to say.
Why, thank you.
That
What
was
did you
epic.
do?
They
Oh.
made out in front of Christian protesters at Pride. It was beautiful.
So we're at Pride, and we're marching in the parade with Celeste's college, and we walk by, and they had, you guys have seen those, the angels that stand in front of protesters. So they have these like PVC pipes with white sheets hanging from them, so the protesters are blocked from view whenever the Westboro Baptist Church shows up somewhere or something along those lines. And they had them there. So Celeste and I walked around them, got directly in front of some of the protesters that were just screaming about sodomy and blah, blah, blah. And we spent about a good 30 or 45 seconds just feeling each other up and making out really hard in front of all of them. I took a video.
You got what you came for.
It was awesome, and just the matter of fact way you guys just like walked up to there, like, yep, we're now going to suck face right in front of you.
I put that everywhere on YouTube. Don't forget.
Yeah.
I would just be passing out butt plugs and going, "How do you know you don't like sodomy until you try it? Here, free sample."
Right.
I was just thinking, like, sodomy's all right, but it's nothing to shout about.
I don't know. It's pretty fantastic.
And even though we're on a little bit of a tangent on this point, I'll go ahead and I'll say it anyway, just because I know full well I'm going to make Callie lose it. Yeah, it's kind of hard to yell and scream and chat about sodomy when you got various gags in your face, but we wouldn't know anything about that at all.
Yeah, it's impolite to talk with your mouth full.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't get the joke.
Yeah, Callie. By the way, Callie and I Callie and I, one of these days, are going to have a discussion that's going to be recorded where we're going to go through every little possible nuance in those little black books about what we would and would not do.
Oh, I'm into it. Yeah, like let's do that.
We got to do it. We got to get Bobby on, and we got to get Ashley on.
I'll be making notes in mine.
Yeah,
Do you guys think you're the only ones that? Do you guys think you're the only ones that have such a repertoire?
No, but it's just more matter that.
I think the joke is how often I talk about it.
Well, yes.
Oh, people that talk about things.
I awesome.
So, there is actually reason for letting this go out the way that it has.
Angry Dragon advertisements?
It's even though this is really serious, we do need to kind of lighten it up a little bit, because this is one of those situations that comes up. The idea of Callie going out there and basically counter-protesting right in these people's faces is another one of these situations where you are trying to forcefully, for lack of a better way of putting it, normalize right into these people's faces, and they can't get away from it because they put themselves there in that place in the first place. And I think maybe that's the piece that is really missing from the whole damn situation with the student. The societal normalization of humans. Doesn't matter what amount of melanin you've got in your skin, or what language you speak, or who you want your naughty bits to be in love with. The normalization of human to human is the biggest problem of the whole goddamn thing. And that's, to me, where the biggest problem of this whole damn thing comes up.
Yeah, and this is, if I may follow on from that, jump back to the conversation we were having last week, Shujin. Although we went into a bit of a Godwin earlier.
Who are you kidding? We hit that table so hard it's in orbit.
Yeah, it's as me and Shujin were talking last week, sort of in preparation for this, I did a bit of reading around. This whole kind of shaming people by marking them out as different in some way, making them like wear something, you know, to identify them as other. It goes back a long way, and it's not fair to give the Nazis credit for that. On there's the whole thing about there's been all kinds of ways that Jewish people have been marked out. The yellow star's been around for a very long time. People in various parts of America, going back a while, were had to wear letters on their clothing representing convictions for sexual misdemeanors like adultery or incest. There was the marking of sort of thieves, like either by tattooing or branding or stuff in the Middle Ages. There was all kinds of ways that people have been marked out as different and other in history in order
Scarlet
to deliberately
letter.
shame. Yeah, in order to deliberately shame them.
Yeah,
And-
but just to be clear about this, yes, it goes down way back through history, but as with everything else, and yes, I'm stereotyping for a reason, you know, leave it to the Germans to make it a very efficient system and take all the fun out of it, you know?
Yeah.
They're good at that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, in a school environment, it takes very little to mark you out as different, and get you a lot of stick and a lot of bullying on there.
Well, yeah, and just even having the wrong damn pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Isn't that the... Okay, really quickly, because some people are not going to get that. There were kids in the 80s who did not have Air Jordan sneakers who were made fun of, and then there were those that were able to afford them at $200 a pop in the mid-'80s, and that was a significant amount of money, who were killed for them. And no fucking lie. Yes, I went ahead and I dropped an F-bomb. You don't believe me? Look it the hell up, because I remember it living outside of New York City, and oh my God, that was absolutely unconscionable to me in the first place back then, and I was a teenager looking at all this stuff going, what?
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as being like left-handed or needing glasses or any other kind of thing, and to deliver for someone in education to deliberately try and inflict that additionally on students with the backing of the school behind it is, to me, something that makes this particularly horrific, because someone in that position has to know how shitty kids can be to each other anyway without any encouragement.
Well, I think a lot of times the attitude there is more like, you know, kids will be kids, or, you know, well, I got picked on as a kid and it made me stronger, so like we're gonna let this toughen these kids up. And you know, I don't want to pretend that I know what things were like, you know, back in the day or whatever. But you know, there is some innocent sort of picking on that happens or whatever, and like obviously you know, it's valuable. Like, I mean, we need to learn how to deal with conflict, and we need to learn how to deal with people who are going to be shitty to us. But you know, there is a line. You know, I mean, this is literal torture that some of these kids are going through, and that, I mean, it needs to be called out. And I think it's I don't think it's an ignorance that it's happening. I think it's an ignorance of the severity and of, you know, what's actually happening. This, you know, it's not innocent. It's awful and has terrible consequences.
Yeah, and you know what I don't understand is, what do they think people go, like, apparently people go into bathrooms to do everything but take a leak. Like,
well, if you look at some of the politicians, they do go into the bathroom.
Okay, well,
it's projecting.
Yes. Oh, it is. It really, really is. The people who make the most noise about this shit are the people who are thinking, well, if I was in a bathroom, that's what I would be doing. And that's totally what they're doing. They're shifting the focus off onto a group that, they figure, well, it's easy to blame these people, so nobody's going to look when I do it. It's ridiculous.
Well, and how many times did we have politicians literally say something like, well, if that was a thing when I was in school, I would have just been like, well, I'm a girl today, so I can look in the girls' locker room.
Exactly!
It's like, you realize you literally just admitted to being a sexual predator.
Yes.
That's not an exaggeration. You literally just outed yourself as a sexual predator. So,
exactly.
Am I really the person we need to be having the conversation about in bathrooms?
Exactly. Well, and I've got a meme that I've used here and there, and it's like keep priests out of bathrooms,
yeah.
And I've said that in discussions several times. I'm like, you know what? If you're gonna ban anybody from a bathroom with children, it's clergy. Start banning clergy from bathrooms, and you know what? Ban them from all public places. And then we're talking, because those are the ones that we can actually demonstrate victimize people. And and then they bring, oh, think of the children. I'm like, who the hell is screwing the children? Oh, look, clergy. That, and you guys know why that pisses me off to no end, because
I will tell you, one of the most powerful exchanges that I have ever had with a person was, I was giving a talk at a convention, and during the Q&A, and this was almost right after HB2 happened, so I mean, that was kind of the hot topic on everyone's mind, and someone during the Q&A mentioned that they were a sexual assault survivor, and
Yes.
they were looking very much from the perspective of safety, and they were sort of on the side of HB2. And so I very delicately, because the last thing I'm going to do is shout down a sexual assault survivor. So I very delicately explained, look, this is something that I take super seriously. I helped build a nonprofit and helped run a nonprofit for a while that was specifically for helping sexual assault survivors. So it needs to be understood that this is a thing that I take deadly seriously. But then I start going through, so I think it's 75 or 80% of sexual assaults happen are perpetrated by someone who is close to the victim, i.e. a parent, a brother, sister, coach, clergy person, teacher, so on and so forth. And I kind of went on down the line, and I felt like I did an okay an okay job of not shouting her down and explaining very gently, well, here's why that fear is kind of misplaced. And she came up to me after and she thanked me for not being angry and aggressive in my answer, and she said, you know what, you're right, it was my dad.
Yeah. And that's what angers me, because the people who are screaming bloody murder about, ooh, protect the women and children, they're appropriating my survivorship to further their bigotry, and that pisses me the fuck off. Just beyond words. You have no right to do that.
Well, and there was a report that came out that was authored by, I think it was something in the neighborhood of 200 or 250 organizations that deal specifically with sexual violence prevention and response. So we're talking about support programs for victims. We're talking about domestic violence shelters, and organizations that help these people who are the victims and the survivors of these crimes. All of them saying in a united voice, this is the wrong thing to do. You're not making anyone safer, and in fact, you're making trans people less safe.
That's right.
We're over here screaming to you what the problem is and what you can do to fix it, but you're fear-mongering instead. And that was largely ignored. So I did I actually had the chance to have a sit-down with an Ohio legislator. because
recall, yeah.
he had put out this thing saying that he was going to write Ohio's bathroom bill, and that he was trying to do it specifically in a way that would not hurt trans people, which is a flawed premise from the beginning, obviously. But I'm thinking, like, you know, if he's genuinely there, then maybe we can talk some sense into this guy. And he had mentioned that he wanted to meet with members of the trans community to discuss it. So I sent him an email. And I did not expect a response, but I sent him an email and I said, hey, you know, if you're genuinely interested in having this conversation, let's get together and talk. And he said, and his response was like, yeah, let's go get coffee tomorrow. I'll buy. Okay, fair enough. And, you know, so we sat down and we had this talk, and he's talking about, you know, protecting women and protecting women and protecting women. And I'm like, okay, so you have convicted male sexual offenders in bathrooms with your sons today, and
Yes.
you've never thought, you know, that was a situation that you might want to do something about? Or my friend Jonah went with me. My friend Jonah has actually been assaulted in bathrooms twice,
Right.
in some horrific ways. And his question was, and he actually, and this was in an email exchange later, he actually went and found how many sexual assaults happened in this guy's district, and said, you know, X number of sexual assaults happened in your district last year. What about this makes you want to do something where that didn't make you want to do something? And I mean, he sent the email to the guy asking him like 3 times and never got an answer.
Of course
So
not.
it's like,
because
I mean, it's very plain that this is not what this is about. Conservatives don't give a shit about domestic violence or rape survivors until
or
they
children
have-
being molested.
Yeah.
They don't, because it's an excuse to be a bigot. They are using survivors and victims as an excuse to be a victim, and it's utterly disgusting.
And I'd like to jump back to Callie's opening of the show where she talked about not treating your out group as like monolithic or assuming they're arseholes on there, and it's something that even with conservatives I try and practice, but this is judging them on their actions, and they've done this repeatedly for a long time, across the US, and conservative and sort of right-wing elements in other countries are raising similar issues and acting in similar ways, and all of it flies in the face of what the evidence suggests a good solution would be. And it all does demonstrable and predictable harm to people, and for the groups that they claim to care about, they claim to care about the whole pro-life thing of caring to claim so much about a fetus's rights, yet they care nothing about the child when it's born, and that's evidenced by their removal of any kind of support that child may get or its mother may get.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is not just because, say, most of us on this panel are fairly liberal, us as assuming the other side are ourselves. We've all, I know, looked extensively into the actions of the Conservatives, and they've almost always been very unpleasant.
Yeah, we got to see about getting ourselves out of here shortly. Unfortunately, I've got something going on fairly early tomorrow that I got to see if I can actually wake up in time for. So I'm going to see about wrapping this just a hair earlier than normal. Joey, I'm seeing that you've been a little bit quiet, and I'm getting worried that you're liable to be toddling off before we close up proper. So I'll give you a first shot if there's any last item that you want to go ahead and throw in there.
Sorry, just been distracted with a little bit of going-ons on my end, and a bit tired, but people talk about in this day and age, oh, we've gotten past that sort of thing, and we don't do that kind of thing anymore, and still doing it. It just doesn't make sense in this day and age. And that's all I got.
Okay. Tech, I'll give you your chance also.
Growing up, you talked about the Nike shoes, the Air Jordans, I should say. There were a lot of reasons why I was picked on as a kid growing up, between the medications, between having to wear glasses, bifocals at that, by the way. In junior high, yeah, you get the nickname 8 Eyes. Forget 4 Eyes. No, it goes up exponentially. A lot of things, a lot of different nicknames, a lot of different violent actions, and that was just for little differences. Okay, and it changes you. Not necessarily for the better. There are aspects of myself that it changed for the better, because I was very determined not to be like some of those assholes. But I've saw other kids who got bullied and how they changed. And some of them, not so good. So, for people, when I read the article, and especially since my family has a history of escaping the Nazi regime, when I read that article, I was just, what's the saying? Choke a bitch?
Yeah.
I really wanted to reach out to the administrator through the phone by grip and rip out the throat of that person so that no other child had to go through that kind of pain and torment that was initiated by an adult. Kids can be absolutely brutal. But, they get it. Most of it's learned from their adult counterparts. And when you have a school, somebody that is a functionary at a place of higher learning, demonstrating that behavior is okay, I'm pissed. And it's just, when you're somebody who hasn't been the target of ridicule and shame and blame and violence, literally to the point of where you're seeing stars because you can't breathe, you have no idea what it's like. So, to the community out there, yeah, there are those of us who we understand and we're in your corner.
Okay. Joseph, assuming that your connection holds up properly enough, what would you like to close off with?
And no crows.
No, sorry, I had to leave there. I had a emergency.
No worries.
That's what the sirens were about.
Unclench next time.
Next time they won't call the fire department. Yeah, I just like to see an end to conformism in general, because I think the world is a little bigger than it was before, and the clan-mindedness, I mean, this really has to end, because, I mean, even if these people who have a clan mentality, who are living completely within their own bubble, they have to understand that, what's going on inside their bubble is now visible to the rest of the world. So, They're not living in isolation anymore. And yeah, I really think we should just overcome our initial instinctive reaction, fear of different. We have to get rid of that, and to begin thinking rationally about everything that's around us. A little more skepticism, I think, would be really, really helpful for us getting along together and also for democracy.
It works. Heretic Women, you get your shot here.
Well, I agree with Joseph 100%. I really think that getting away from that innate desire to conform and to have everyone around you conform plays a lot into that, and that fear of anything different. I think it's important to start making different a virtue, a huge virtue, and to celebrate those differences and make every difference a normal thing. Yeah.
Can I add just one more thing? Because I mean, there's different ways of doing that. Because I mean, you know, I think even our concept of gender has to change.
Oh,
because
for sure.
I've always been for the peacock male. I mean, I basically want anybody to dress any way they want. I mean, you know, I've been promoting kilts. I work from time to time with there's a designer here called Rick Owens. If you look him up, and he's like, there's no lines between the gender about what anybody can wear. Anybody can do whatever they want, and I mean, it should scare no one. There's no rational reason for it.
The purpose of clothes is to cover us from the elements. That should be it. You know, like that's all we need them for.
Oh, it is an expression, but
well, I mean the basic purpose of clothing, right?
Yeah.
So we don't need clothing to say I'm this or that or the other thing, you know, unless you're working at McDonald's. I suppose, you know, if you're working at McDonald's, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Why did you choose that T-shirt?
Because,
cleavage.
But, yeah, that too. Housing your point. But yeah, it's to me, conformity has a lot of blame, I guess, to this sort of thing, and that whole. And using anyone who is different as an excuse just to be a jackass is really got to stop.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Chris, here's your big opportunity.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I agree with most of what's been said before. As mentioned earlier, I think Deb's right about celebrating people's differences and not being afraid to get to know and interact with people that are a bit different to you, maybe a bit outside what your normal in group would be. And normally when you do that, you find that it's a great experience and you can learn a lot. The other thing is just sort of as Tech was touching on, having a bit of empathy for other people and thinking about how your actions might affect them on there. Because I had a pretty shitty time growing up as well, and that's affected me for a long time in negative ways, and still affects me to this day on there. But I'm not claiming in any way to understand what the experience is like for someone who's sort of LGBTQ or whatever else. But so I wouldn't wish the experience I had on my worst enemy.
And Bridget, I know it's been a relatively quiet night for you, but it's your big shot to close off if there's anything that you'd like to.
Just what Chris said. And yeah, and as far as the Supreme Court, you know, issuing the stay, that is rather disappointing. The reason they did that was to preserve the status quo for the time being. And the status quo is what seems to be the problem.
There is that. All right, Callie, wanted to make sure that you got the opportunity of kind of playing cleanup because you would know a lot more of the nuance of all this to kind of cover over whatever pieces you think should be finished off with, plus whatever you think that we've kind of missed off on.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. So what we have to realize is that oftentimes for people who see themselves as allies to the LGBT community, what they think of when they think of the queer and trans community are, pride parades and gay bars and rainbows and, having fun and embracing who you are and that kind of thing. And all of that stuff is accurate. All of that stuff is real. But what we can't lose sight of are that things like this still happen. People are still denied access to society. I mean, not just bathrooms, not just healthcare, but people are denied access to society. And we're not talking about trivial matters of, well, there's this legal technicality thing that I can't do that you can do. I mean, we're talking about the quality of people's lives and people's lives themselves. And we have a tendency to focus on the progress that we've made and the great things that have happened. And believe me, there have been great things. And I don't want to downplay that completely because it's important to recognize the victories that we've had. But I think a lot of times we focus on those things to the exclusion of the knowledge that things are still really, really bad in some areas. We have trans kids who are killing themselves because they're being tortured in school. We have people who are dying because they can't access adequate health care. We have people who are terrified to walk out their front door because they don't know what's going to happen to them when they leave. We have, and this is personal to me, every single time I'm in public with my girlfriend, I feel like there's a target on my back. When I decide to reach out and hold her hand, when I decide to reach over and give her a kiss, when I use cutesy little pet names or tell her I love her in public, my head's always on a swivel. I'm always looking around to see who's around, to see if anybody's looking at us funny, to see if anyone's threatening to us. That stuff never leaves. That's not something that ever leaves my head unless I'm inside my own house, and sometimes not even then. And I mean, that stuff's real. That stuff still happens, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't celebrate and that we shouldn't be happy for the things that we've done and that we shouldn't, celebrate difference and celebrate us, figuring out who we are and learning to embrace who we are as people. But we can't do that to the exclusion of these issues because things really are still this bad. When we observe a day called the Transgender Day of Remembrance every year, and it's usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 to 300 names that we read every year of trans people who are murdered for being who they are because somebody decided that they didn't deserve to live anymore because they didn't fit, what somebody decided was going to be a man or what somebody decided was going to be a woman. So these are not academic concepts that exist in a vacuum. We are talking about people's lives, and it really is that serious, and we need to take it that seriously.
Thank you. I'm going to close with something that's weird for me. I don't usually script out stuff that I talk about. It's very, 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 very rare, especially for closing. But I want to close with this because we are talking about a high school. We're talking about high school life. And before I go ahead and say it, for all of you that might be listening, might be watching, who find yourselves in a similar situation where you don't feel like you are allowed, and I use that in scare quotes, our version over here, my version at least, to be who you are. I'm sorry for that. And I would hope that with what we do, we are trying to make that a little bit easier for you to be able to do that by trying to change what pieces we can, a little at a time. Sometimes as hard as we can, but we try what we can do. We're in your corner. That having been said, this is going to resonate to a lot of people, and there's going to be a good goddamned reason for it. You may need to indulge yourself $5 to get the entirety of this. Dear Mr. Vernon, we accept the fact that we had to sacrifice a whole Saturday in detention for whatever it was that we did wrong. But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. You see us as you want to see us. In the simplest terms, in the most convenient definitions. But what we found out is that each one of us is a brain, and an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. Does that answer your question? Sincerely yours, the Crap Crew. Society will see you for a lot of different things. You can be who you actually are. We hope that you can. That's what we want. As always, everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We hope that you found something worthwhile in all of our perspectives and hopefully giving you something to think about. As always, I want to first off thank Callie Wright for having been with us tonight. A return guest, which apparently she did not learn the first time out. Thank you very much, hon. By all means, I know I've got a whole bunch of your information in the show notes for you already, but by all means, plug everything and anything you want, and I'll make sure that we get whatever extra into show notes for you.
She's probably going to take up more time than me for once.
I don't know. I've got it down pretty.
Yes, you do.
Science.
Just don't plug me. I'm sensitive.
So my podcast is the Gaytheist Manifesto. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. You'll find the show. We're facebook.com/the Gaytheist Manifesto. I'm Callie Wright on Facebook. I'm at Gaytheist Callie on Twitter. And the Gaytheist Manifesto blog is at pathos.com/blogs/the Gaytheist Manifesto.
Oh, that I did not have. You're going to have to get me that.
Yes, that's relatively new.
Yes. Oh, well, that explains why I didn't have it yet. Piss off. Thanks.
Wait, you can't do future predictions here, Sujin? Come on.
I've got a lot of things to me.
What are we doing here?
I'm never, ever coming on your show again. Ever.
Work on it.
Now. Say that now. But there's... See, I'd like to go ahead and say that she's kidding about this, but there's something about goats and pictures, and I don't want to tip my hand yet.
Sujin, nay means nay.
Say that now.
It's all in the accent.
It is. Joseph, thank you very kindly for your time this morning. I hope that you have a good one. And anything that we need to plug for you at this point?
Nothing to plug, sir, but thank you for having me on.
That changes.
Thank you, Callie, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep. Chris, thank you, of course, for your morning, and I know that you've got something to plug because I've got it in the show notes for you already.
Oh, excellent, yeah. I've had a recent bout of insanity, which is leading to a charity bout of boxing on the 18th of September. I'm doing this in support of Cancer Research UK and aiming to raise as much as I can on there. I've been training for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just hoping the bout's not too much more painful than the training.
So, getting into the box is a bit
It's a bit difficult. Yeah, but I've got a Just Giving page set up, which will be linked through the show notes, and I'm regularly sharing through my Facebook page, which is Chris Sampson, on there, and so I'll be keeping everyone updated there with how training and stuff is going.
Good luck on that.
Yeah, and I say, but I chose to do this because at the time when I was offered this, Bobby had just had his cancer diagnosis, and Team Tiny Dancer had just had their loss to cancer as well. So it seemed a very good thing to do at the moment.
I believe the official hashtag is fuck cancer. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's about right. Isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
In multiple languages.
Yes, we could. Unrenode Tech, thank you very much. Good morning. And anything that we need to plug for you at this point? I'm guessing not.
Just his horns.
Well, first to Chris, according to several American athletes, there's some really good syringes that come out of Italy that you may be interested in, if you're having performance issues. And I don't mean in bed. Yeah. Not that I'm encouraging anything. Callie, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it. I know everybody else here appreciates it, and hopefully there's a lot of people watching right now that, they pull away something from this, something positive.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we can't see you from the waist down.
Second, I definitely cannot condone in any way using drugs in sport.
Yeah, that was a joke. The horns, come on, it was a joke.
Yeah. And I'm not. Yeah, I might look into getting a couple of horseshoes, but.
See, now he's talking my language. Joey, thank you for your time this morning. Have a good and get yourself some rest soon, I hope. Close enough. Tech, he's singing your song.
No, that was me actually pretending to be him.
Good choice.
Come on, none of you guys have the depth of snoring.
Yes, we know.
Yeah, variances that I do.
That's true.
Yes.
You are our shining example of that.
Yes.
I am the sleeping atheist.
Seriously, Joe, you take good care of yourself, man. Thank you.
Joey?
Much. Joey.
He might not have been kidding.
Close enough. Bridget, thank you very much, of course, for your time this morning. And what shall we be plugging for you, I wonder?
You can find me on Facebook at Bridget Fitch, and there's also my blog, bridgetfitch2112.wordpress.com.
Appreciate that. Heretic Woman, thank you. Good morning. It's not freezing outside yet. The season hasn't changed yet.
No,
the Canadians are not hatching yet.
Nope.
I'm still able to. I was out in the motorcycle with this on earlier, so it's all good.
So plug all of the things, if you will.
All right. So of course, I am always found Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on Beyond the Trailer Park, and this week I am excited. We are having a gentleman by the name of Pete Griffiths, who is an ex-Scientologist all the way from Ireland. He's probably crazy because he's joining us at 2:00 in the morning his time, and he's like, I'm there for the whole damn show, so I'm impressed. So we're excited to talk to him about Scientology and David Miscavige's father's new book that came out recently, and Pete himself has a bit of a story over from Ireland, so we're really excited for that. That's at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us through beyondthetrailerpark.com. It's got all of our links to Spreaker, which we now do live. So we are live on Spreaker with live chat as well as live here on YouTube. You can see us all at the same time and listen. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, I think that about does that. I can't think of anything else specifically, so that's all good.
Close enough. So, of course, everybody, thank you very much for taking the time with us. If you'd like to contact us at any time, please feel free. Again, drop an email message to podcast@holycrapthevlogcast.com. I'm more than happy to read whatever it is you've got. If you'd like to leave voicemail message, phone number for that is 859-HCTV-554, 859-428-8554. I'm never doing that again. Bullshit, I'm going to do it again next week because it's just enough to piss off people. See, Chris doesn't have a problem with it. Me, I look at it and I'm just like, I've actually got this spelled out right over here. And of course, you can follow all of us, all of the links that you need for the show, as well as the audio podcast, over at holycrapthevlogcast.com. Well, thank you very much. Of course, again, Callie, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to teaming up with you one of these days on Jake's show, because, yeah, by the way, our sympathies go out to Jake and his family. I don't know if you saw that over on Facebook. A family pet.
Yeah. Their chicken.
Yeah, which unfortunately, we feel bad for you, Chief. Our hopes for peace, of course, for all of you guys over there. Sorry to hear about it. Meantime, we'll be looking forward to seeing all of you guys next week, of course. As a fair warning, I am going to be working on getting two future shows with 3 guests in the near future. Hugin and Mugen are not going to be them.
Odin? Are we getting Odin?
Exactly. And of course, if
me without my hammer.
And of course, if you'd like to check out the stuff that Dallin has been doing, you can check him out on his blog at robotechtiger.tumblr.com. But otherwise, you take very good care of yourselves. We'll be looking forward to you. And item last, if you are an LGBTQ youth, there is an expression out there, it does get better. I can tell you, as someone who was born in 1969, who grew up through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, I can tell you what's changed in my lifetime has been positively immense. Culturally, things have changed around a hell of a lot.
You're only a year older than me.
There are plenty of opportunities for you to do something drastic. But you can't come back from that point. Stick it out. We will be here for you. We will help. Even if it's just to sit on the end of a Skype call and just be quiet. There are places, there are people. You don't have to go through this alone, because you're not alone. I've said before, it's okay to feel lonely. Don't ever, ever think that you're alone, ever again. So, until the next time we get together, everyone, as always, I wish you the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you well. Until next time, as always, Fujin, Matane. I love you and I miss you. Dream of me. Till the next time we get together, everyone, as always, good night.